Hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome, esteemed audience, to our third webinar this morning. Our digital host today will be our colleague Luca de Koe, whom you are not seeing right now, but that is the purpose. But he will be taking good care of us. And I have the pleasure to be your moderator today. My name is Sanne van Breukelen and I work for Cenix Netherlands as the team lead transport and mobility. For those of you joining again, welcome back. And you know the drill, so I don't have to explain anything. But for all of you who are new this morning, what we usually do in our webinars is we take one topic, one theme that we find deserves to be highlighted a bit more. And today that will be shared mobility. And then we ask speakers from our network to explain something about this topic. Our webinars are meant to inspire, they're meant to trigger your brain, they're meant to make you think about things differently and maybe come up with new ideas. And also it's the purpose to just bring you a good morning and a happy coffee or tea moment. So hopefully we will do all that for you. And with that in mind, let me briefly introduce to you our three speakers today. So first of all, we have David van Rossum, who is part of the iRiders. I will tell you a little bit more about him later. Jacoba van Gastel, We All Wheel is your background. And our own colleague Pablo will also be one of the speakers. So that will be our speaker panel today. And to start with you, David. I'm saying David because I'm speaking English, but your name is David. Um, Welcome. Obviously, we have met you through our Horizon Europe Gemini project, which is a European project. But you take part in the Amsterdam Living Lab. So you're actually, just a few blocks down from our office, basically, um, as part of one of the Rijriders, formerly known as the Dijkrijders. So please take the floor and share your insights with our audience.
Yeah, hi everyone. I have been asked to tell the story of the Rijriders, how we got started and how we made it all happen, and what this is all about. Now I have to, so this is, uh, this is the area that we're active in. You see the yellow, I have highlighted it in yellow. This is along the dike, and I indicated the former historic dike in red. This is where the dike used to be, and on the other side it used to be here. So in between those two red lines, that was all water in the past. And the dike is now lying somewhere in the middle of Amsterdam North, and we have currently 5 electric cars along this yellow area. It is an initiative of private citizens who share cars. The cars are lease cars, electric cars, all of them. And currently we have about 35 households, which means more than 50 drivers. So we have households of 2, but very often the children can join as well on the same account. And they often do, especially for younger people like students or youngly married. It's very nice to have parents who can provide you with a car via our car sharing corporation. We're gradually growing. Every month we have 1 member, 2 members, more or less at that pace. So my guess is that we'll be growing at a pace of about 5 to 10 members per year. So that's really nice. We started this year on the 1st of January. We started last year on the 1st of January. I'll tell you the story of how we got there. And we have some visibility in our neighborhood, which is also something we should take care of ourselves. Okay, let's move on. I have to press a button here. How does it all start? Well, like anything good, it starts with a person and an idea. In this case, it was me, living in the north of Amsterdam. I moved in at around the time this idea came up. I used to have a lease car. I quit my job, so I lost the lease car. And living in Amsterdam, a car is more of a luxury than a necessity. So I considered what to do next. And then coincidentally, I bumped into a group of people who shared cars. And that caught my interest. So I asked, how do you do it? What is behind it? And I began to entertain the idea that I might start something like that myself. So I started exploring. First, I explored in the neighborhoods whether there was any interest for such an initiative. And I quickly found out that there actually was. A lot of people were quite positive. So that was quite encouraging. And then I also started exploring how the heck am I going to do this? Because it's complicated. You have to lease cars. How can you lease cars as an individual? Multiple cars. You need the software and the hardware to track what the cars are doing. You need the software to calculate each user's usage, and then to send them invoices and all of that. So you immediately realize that this is a hell of a job. So you need partners. You cannot invent everything on your own. So I started exploring the market, and I found a partner. The partner was Wij Zijn Deel. And that's actually it started same way with one guy with an idea and some ideals as well. It was an idealistic idea of his. About 10 years, he started setting up car sharing in The Hague. And then I found him via the internet. And what I liked a lot about his website is that, and you could check it out, wijzijndeel.nl. Check it out, because you really, at first sight, you can see that these are people who want to share everything, not just cars, but also the ideas and how to do it. So it's very open source. They say, if you like this idea and if you want to do something similar, just use our ideas. We built it all up, we invented it, we made it work, and we're happy to share freely with anyone who wants to do something similar. So that's an idealistically driven company. Yeah, thanks for the link. So I reached out to them, and we established contact, and we started exploring the options in my neighborhood. And that really gave the whole thing a push. And then at the same time, I was able to, so I started organizing meetings with people in the neighborhoods, informing them. I invited the guys from Wijzijndeel to attend those meetings and to answer any questions. People had a lot of questions because it's all new and it feels a bit uncertain. To get rid of your car, feels almost like a divorce to some people. I sometimes think. So people have a lot of questions before they dare to move into such a different way of driving. At some point, I found that I could count on about 12 to 15 people joining from the start. That was not enough. You need about 20 people to get started. So that's like a critical mass. If you have a group of less than 20 people, it's less likely to become successful, because with 20 people, you can lease 4 cars. 20 people can carry the burden of 4 cars. And you need about 4 cars to make sure that you never miss out on a car. So the likelihood of all 4 cars being booked at the same time is extremely small if you have 4 cars. And this is something a lot of people find difficult to understand. It's always a question, I'm almost sure it's in your mind as well. What do you do if all the cars are booked and you need a car? So that's a real problem you would never have if you own your own car. So the answer is twofold. One, make sure you start with 20 people and 4 cars, because the chances of this happening are extremely small. Because if there's one typical aspect about cars, it is that whatever brand or type, cars stand still almost all of the time. Cars are very rarely used. Even if you drive a lot still, your car is very rarely used. And that's a difficult notion to grasp, but it's a fact. So you need 4 cars, but on top of that, in the rare cases that all 4 cars are booked, what we have done, you get a Green Wheels contract as a corporation. So as a group, you have one account, and you allow members to book a Green Wheels car as a fallback if all our cars are booked. So you can never miss out on a car. That's the answer to that first question that almost everyone has if you talk about car sharing. Okay, going back to where I was, I thought my estimate was I could count on about 12 to 15 people joining from the start. That was not enough. And then the people from Wijzijndeel who helped me set this up, they said, well, there's another guy, just like you, a bit further down the dike, who is exactly at the same phase. He's starting something, and he says about 8 or 10 people. So it's a very corporate term, but we decided to organize a merger, and we merged into one car sharing group with a wider geographical reach. So now we suddenly had about 4 kilometers of dike to cover, the dike along the A. And we became one car sharing group. So that was fun. And from then on, we moved the other guy is Robert, and we moved together, the two of us. And we quickly managed to get a group of around 25 households. who we started calling the courageous, because they had the courage to just start with nothing. No, we had about 20 people who had the courage to start with nothing. And once we had that, we started a little marketing campaign along the dike in our neighborhood, because we realized now the message is different. First, the message was, we are considering doing this. If we start, would you join? And the courageous said, well, it's all unknown territory, but yeah, we're in. But once we had that group, we realized we have a new message now, and to other people. And the message was, we are starting. Actually, we almost started. It's all ready. Would you join? That's a slightly different message that pulled in another 5 or 6 households. So we suddenly started with well over 25 households. And that also allowed us to start not with 4 cars, but with 5. So that was a very good start. And what we did then is the trial. So what you do is you start a 6-month trial. And we did that starting the 1st of January 2025. So all the preparatory work that I just explained, the exploration, the idea, the looking for a partner, and all of that, most of that happened in 2024. Took us almost a year to get this, to get the right group of people together and set everything up. And then on the 1st of January 2025, we started a 6-month trial with the 25 households. And I took a stock picture from the internet here in this slide with something that looks complicated to express how we felt, because you have to keep a lot of things going. And it's not very simple, but with the support of Wijs en Deel, we made it happen. And I should also mention, we got the support from the Horizon Europe Germany project that was just mentioned. They gave us money to get it started. That was a great help. And part of the money was used to pay external parties to help this set up. So that helped a lot. And we also got a lot of support from the municipality of Amsterdam, who have a special department for these kinds of initiatives by civilians. Because needless to explain, the city of Amsterdam is very fond of these kind of initiatives, because we take cars off the road, we change fossil fuel cars, we change them into electric cars, and also we organize citizens to do stuff as a community, which is something that the city of Amsterdam also encourages. Okay, so we got a lot of support from a lot of parties, and then we started a 6-month trial, and for 2 reasons really. First of all, for us ourselves as a corporation that was in the process of establishing itself, to see if we could make this work, and secondly, for the participants to experience car sharing and see if it would work for them. And what we found at the end of the trial was that some people didn't drive at all. So they joined for 6 months, but they didn't drive at all. So they never really tried. And all the people that did drive, they all joined except for one person. So that was very encouraging and very positive. So it's really a very strong message. It shows that once you start trying this, you like it, and you see it as a very serious alternative to owning your own car. I'll get back to that. So here you see Robert, my partner in crime, further down the dike, and myself signing all the legal papers to establish our own corporation. And at the top of the slide, you can see that it took us about a year and a half to get all of this going, plus a trial of 6 months. And now we have started by the 1st of October last year. We started with our own corporation. How did we succeed? Well, like I said, we had a very professional partner, not for profits. There are no parties involved who want to get rich doing this. It's all driven by citizens and civilians doing this with each other. It's the cooperation aspect of it. The subsidies apart from the municipality, and most importantly, I would say the enthusiasm and energy of the participants. So a lot of people really think this is exciting. We're doing something special. We're doing something that has impact. Want to be part of it and also dedicate time and energy to it. And that's really something we foster in our group. It's important to keep that feeling alive. Why do people join? First reason is for climate reasons. They understand that you can have a significant impact if you get rid of your car and start sharing cars. So that's very often one of the most important reasons that people mention. But on a good second place is the saving. You save a hell of a lot of money by sharing a car instead of owning it. And then lastly, also a motivating factor for a lot of people was the social aspect of it. It's nice to do something like this with the people in your neighborhood. You meet each other, you build up something together. It increases the sense of community in the neighborhood. And why do people stay? I would say because of that sense of community. And that's something that's very much on my mind, is to keep that alive and keep that going, and even encourage and stimulate that. How to move forward, and some concerns. Well, first of all, like I said, we have to foster that community culture, the whole idea of the commons, which is something that motivates me very much. I believe that the climate problem and all the problems we're facing, also the political problems, have a lot to do with the fact that people feel much less like they're part of a community. And they feel very much like they don't have much control over their lives. It's all the big corporations and all of that. But that's my personal motivation. I think it's important that we organize society more along communities where people are socially connected and involved with each other. So the reinforcing the motivation of the participants is very much on our minds. We have to keep doing that and find ways of doing that. So organize get-togethers and keep people involved by giving them tasks or asking them to pick up tasks and all of that within the group, and give that visibility. And then we we keep, just like any company, we want to keep our customers happy and keep them with us. So stabilize the current group and keep growing slowly and gradually. And then last but not least, I trust in and hope for what you could call tipping points. And they are critical for growth, but they're also unpredictable. But a typical tipping point could be if we grow from the more cars we have in the streets, the closer the cars are to each other. So a tipping point could be for people who are thinking, I don't want to share a car because it's all the way down the road. I have to walk for 10 minutes to get to the car that I'm sharing. That's too far away. But the more people join, the more cars will be leased, and the higher the likelihood that you will have a car much closer to your house. That's a typical tipping point. But there are more of these tipping points that you always see in systems that change, and they're unpredictable, but we try to keep our eyes open for them. Okay, so here you have at the top of the slide, you have a lady who is trying to compare apples to pears. And on the right, you see typical image that people have in their minds that they associate with having a car of your own, the luxury, the status, and all of that. And then on the left, you have the image that people sometimes have if you talk about car sharing. Of course, it's not like that. I just try to show but there is a divide between the two ideas, the two systems. So what are the big advantages of sharing a car? Well, like I said, and like people do realize, and we keep reinforcing that, you have a meaningful positive climate impact. It really makes a big difference for any household to not own a car. Um, and for your personal experience, you don't have one car to choose from. You have a number of cars. You can pick the small car if you want to have need to go into town, or the big car if you want to go on holiday, or you have to transport something. So you have different cars for different purposes, horses for courses. That's a luxury that somebody who owns just one car doesn't have. You make considerable savings, obviously, and you make more rational choices. So taking the car is not just it's not the one thing you always automatically do, but it's one of the options you have available. And once it becomes that, you find yourself making much better choices. So, for instance, a long drive in my own country in Holland, I rarely take the car anymore. If I have to go to the north of the country, I take the train. It's much more comfortable. It's much cheaper. I can read a book, and it's ridiculous to spend 2 hours, 2.5 hours just driving, and then even with the traffic jams and everything. So that's the kind of change that you, I think, have to take into account if you compare having a car to sharing a car. It's a completely different experience. And once you're in it, you start experiencing it. It's very difficult to explain. And then the last reason is the community feeling that I spoke about. So, like I said, it's a completely different experience. Price comparisons are just one aspect. It is cheaper to share a car than to own it, obviously. But if you look at the price of one trip, you can think, wow, 50, 60 euros for one day, having a car for one day. That feels like a lot. But I experience now that for about 300 euros a month, I can take a car whenever I like. And for my holidays and everything, throughout the year, it's on average, it's about 300 euros a month. And I'm driving in a brand new electric car. So that's a lot cheaper than if I would have owned one. So it's also a different lifestyle. And you also realize that the whole model of people individually owning car is also something that is marketed to us by corporations that make money off it. So we are being lured into it. We are being manipulated. It's being sold to us. And if you take two steps back, you can look at it more in a rational way and think, well, a car is just a means to get from A to B, and it's quite an expensive means. And like I said, you have to live it to understand it. I think that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this, David. Yeah, it's clear from your story that you're not just sharing a car, you're building a whole new city in a way. So it's very inspiring indeed. And yeah, I do like that you were saying that it's a different lifestyle. So don't compare apples to pears. Just you have to live it to really know what it's like. So thank you very much for this. We'll go straight through to the next speaker. Jacoba, we have met you during a consortium meeting of our leverage project, and I found your examples of shared mobility. Leverage is about LEVs, so light electric vehicles, and you shared some examples of shared mobility that I thought were very inspiring. So I am sure that our audience will feel the same. So please take the floor.
Well, thank you very much for having me here today, Pablo and Sanne. And let's start with a simple image. Imagine you are 82 years old and you live still independently, but your world has become smaller. The supermarket is 2 kilometers away and the bus feels unsafe. Cycling is no longer an option. Now imagine the only thing between you and participation is mobility. And that's why shared mobility is not about vehicles. It's about inclusion. Micromobility is what my interest is, and today I would like to share with you 2 cases where mobility determines whether people truly belongs. And when I say everyone, I truly mean everyone, not only the student rushing to a lecture or the employee with 2 children, but also the older resident with Parkinson's. We often design for the average, but there is no average. Mobility either connects people to society or quietly excludes them. So, in one word, what is the biggest barrier to shared mobility in your municipality? Maybe you would share one word with us in the chat. Is that skill, for example, or finance? Or maybe political courage? Or public support? Maybe you could share some words and we can come back to that later after the 2 examples. Let's go to case number 1, the students, TU Delft campus. If shared mobility should work anywhere, it should work here. Innovation, technology, and of course talent. And yet, every morning cars queue at the entrance. Millions were invested in the railway station near the campus, Station Delft campus. 4 tracks, high frequency. But when you step off the train, you cannot believe it, but there's nothing at all that carries you further. This is how it should be. But there's no bus, no tram, long walking distances, and shared mobility stays in the old city. And that's because of marked forces. So the system stops at the platform and people choose certainty. They choose their car, not because they love it, but because that's the only thing that works. And look at the scale. Delft University, with all the startups, is more than 20,000 employees. And since the beginning of January, 1,200 visitors per day for the new musical Willem van Oranje. And if we talk about pollution, 42 tons. The potential is enormous, and here is the difficult part. Market logic alone will not fix this picture. And that's due to the fact that too long, this railway station has become known as the station where you cannot get off. If we wait until it becomes profitable, we can wait forever. So the real question becomes, are we willing to temporarily support a system of shared mobility that we believe in for the long term? If the government, the municipality or MRDH chooses not to invest in a bus or tram connection that does not release them from the obligation to invest in the cheaper first of last mile alternatives, and that's namely shared mobility two-wheelers. So if there is an obligation, it can become a very good station. If not, the station becomes symbolic infrastructure. Very beautiful, very expensive, but unused. The second example is a totally different example. So imagine now a new setting, an aging neighborhood. People living independently for longer, some with early dementia. Here, mobility is not about speed. It's about being able to visit your neighbor or the supermarket, to attend a birthday, or to go to the doctor without asking always your son or daughter. Construction is very expensive and space is scarce. The cars feel still as a ride. Participation processes sometimes lead to paralysis, no clear direction. But asphalt for roads and parking spots has consequences. David already named it. And also keep the parking standards as they are. So we get heat, increasing temperature, less green, and fewer spontaneous conversations. And I will show you now a very small video. You saw already the WMO. As more residents age, the municipality increasingly funds mobile devices under the WMO for Scootmobiele. That means we are already investing in public money in mobility, but individually, scattered and storage spaces everywhere. In pilot projects, we tried something completely different. Shared Scootmobiele within housing complexes. And the result? Fewer storage facilities, more efficient use, and with lower public cost. And with a great deal of patience and persuasive effort, we, the municipality and the real estate developers, gradually reduced the number of mandatory parking spaces. And suddenly, space appears. Space for greenery, space for meeting, space for people to connect. That is when mobility becomes social policy. Shared mobility is not a gadget. It's not about scooters or bikes or cars. It's about whether we design systems that quietly exclude or consciously include. It requires, however, courage, not just to experiment, but to choose and to commit. Mobility determines whether people can participate, and participation determines whether society works. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jacoba. This was indeed very inspiring. I think your example in Delft clearly shows that we cannot just leave it to the market, because then if it's not commercial enough, nothing will appear. So that's definitely a clear example. And yeah, and let alone for everyone, right? So that's what your example with the Scootmobiles shows, is that we really need to start thinking in different ways. It's not always just about cars. And I thought your video was really fun to watch, and showed that we have different possibilities as well. So thank you very much for this. I saw a question in the chat also. How can cities plan for inclusivity, especially in last mile solutions? Because not everyone uses apps for these services. So I think basically, if we translate that to your Scootmobile example, how do the elderly know that this exists, even if they do not maybe have a phone or smartphone, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think this is a very good question, but maybe it's not always an app. In this case, we share just the keys. And that's very easy, especially when you have a small apartment, let's say 20 studios, then it's still possible to use keys. For them, it's easier. So I absolutely agree that apps is not always useful for everyone. Sometimes it can work, but sometimes you have to look at other possibilities. And that's the same, for example, in The Hague. We have a bakery, and in the bakery we have some keys. And then you can share a bike, just a normal bike for the people with very low income. So don't make it too complicated if the skill is small enough.
Yes, exactly. So basically, what you're expecting of cities then is to facilitate the possibility, probably through a financial incentive, and maybe also communication-wise. Yeah, and in the case of Delft, probably also a bit of governance to make sure that you have the right partners working together. That would then help create these solutions. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you very much for this. And well, we have seen in all of your stories, of course, the economy matters, right? Of course, it's about how much does it cost. So 4 years ago, when my own car broke down, I also made a calculation for myself. What would be my alternatives? I put together what does it cost for me to buy a new secondhand car or private lease or shared cars, and well, basically, my overview of what a normal car costs, just standing in front of my house, yeah, was for me was really an aha moment. Like I do not want this anymore. Um, Let alone the effects of having a completely different city if we have less cars. And so I also started to think about this differently, but I could not let go of this feeling that the costs, people should know about this, how much it costs to own your own car. And that's when I started bothering Pablo. I told him, could you maybe build something that quickly shows how much it costs to own a car compared to the alternatives that might be there? And of course, Pablo's very smart, so he built it in no time. And I think it's good for you all to watch and see what he made and what this can quickly show. So please, Pablo, take the floor.
Thank you very much, Sunny, for the very good introduction. I'm not as smart as she thinks I am, but we sometimes make things work. This tool is called TOTEC. It's the Total Ownership Tracking's economic calculator, and it also kind of links nicely with what David had discussed previously. So he mentioned mobility as a commons. And that is basically a different and a new concept that many people don't know yet about. And in this tool, what we're trying to do is to compare the cost of owning a car, so privately owned car, versus a commercial shared car, so something that you would get with My Wheels or Green Wheels, and mobility as a commons. So David and iRiders, the community cooperatives sharing vehicles together. So the tool is very easy to use. It's live. You can go to totec.senetgroup.nl. This is still in a beta phase, so that means that it might have some mistakes or some things that don't actually add up nicely. And if you spot them, please let us know. With your feedback, we can make it better. The way it works is you go to the setup and you select your currency. That is very simple. And you move on to the usage and distance. Here, if you know already what your distance is per year or per month or per day, per week, it doesn't matter. If you know how much you drive, you can already type it. If you don't know how much you drive, but you know where you go to and from, then you can click on the map. Let's say we go from somewhere in Amsterdam and I work in Outhorn, and I do that. Maybe I do it every day. So every day I do that, and it takes me 1 hour to go per day. So it already calculated the annual distance that I will drive based on this route, and the time that it will take me during that whole year. Then we can move on to the vehicle and energy. Maybe my car is petrol, maybe it's a battery electric vehicle, or maybe it's diesel. And what we want to do is we want to compare it with the difference between taking my private car versus taking a shared car or sharing a car with my neighbors. If all of the cars have the same fuel type, you can move on to the next one, to the next tab of it, so the cost. If not, you can select the different fuel types for the other vehicles. For simplicity, let's keep it all at petrol, and then we can move on to the costs. Here you have 3 items. So you need to input the costs for the private car, for the shared car, for the commercial operator, and the costs that you would have if you were part of a community that shares the cars. It already has pre-filled data that is somewhat standard data from what we've seen in the market, but you can always change it if you feel that these values are a bit off. You can modify them, and you can also add extra costs if you know that your car has some extra costs added. But in short, it looks at the purchase price of your vehicle, the lifetime, so how many years you think you will stick around with that car, the insurance cost per year, the road task, the tax, the parking, maintenance, and the mvoe. So this was made for the Netherlands, but yeah, perhaps in the city or the country that you're in, this does not exist, so you can leave this at 0. And you can change the fuel price per liter and the consumption of your vehicle per 100 kilometers. That is pretty straightforward. For the shared commercial operator, again, you can change it, and many of them, so my wheels or green wheels, they have the costs available on their website. So if you don't know exactly how much you would pay for a commercial operator, you can look them up in their website. But again, it is already pre-filled with the standard values of shared mobility options. And finally, the commons. This is a bit more tricky because each cooperative has its own way to set up the prices. And it may be that you have different ways to calculate the costs. So most of them have a membership cost and a price per kilometer and a price per hour. So far, that's kind of similar to what you would get in a shared commercial operator. Not all the costs are the same, but the same characteristics apply. However, and maybe David can correct me if I'm wrong here, but some of them have advanced or different type of pricing according to how long you drive during the month or for how long you have the car. So we have added a few other options. So in this case, we can say that if you have these community-owned managed cars, you can pay €3 an hour, but you can say, well, if you use the car more than 50 hours a month, then the price drops to €1 an hour. So you can say, yes, that is something that applies to our shared community. Or maybe it's not linked to the amount of hours, but to the kilometers that you've ridden. So you can say, yeah, after, I don't know, after 350 kilometers a month, the price drops to 15 cents per kilometer. Again, if you want to go back, you can check what the usage and distance was. If we recall, we actually have driven 17,000 kilometers a year and 365 hours a year. And we can then see the results. With the data that we have put so far, we can see what is more expensive than what. So this is basically the fun part of the tool. You can understand what is the cheapest option for you according to what you've put in the tabs 2 and 3 and 4. Sorry, but it also tells you when a different model might become cheaper. So here we see that the cheapest option is indeed something like the community that David is part of, and the most expensive one is a private car. And you can see how these costs are built up. So indeed, the car has a lot of fixed costs, whereas the shared commercial and the commons do not have that many, as in they're evenly split out. And you can see how much you actually need to drive in order for one model to become cheaper. So we can see here in orange color that the mobility as a commons becomes cheaper after around below 2,000 kilometers a year. Then it makes sense, according to the data that we put in, to the cost data, it makes sense for this personal situation to drive a commons. But if, for example, you were to say you can go back to the setup or usage and distance, if you were to say this is actually not what the distance that I drive much less than this, or I drive much more than this, then the results can drastically change. So if you were to say, yeah, maybe something very crazy, maybe I drive 60, or maybe I drive 200 kilometers every day, maybe the results then, it's still cheaper to have a mobility as a commons. But you can see now that the shared commercial vehicle became more expensive than a private car. So the idea of this tool is that you can estimate not on a single occasion, but on your daily commute or your annual expectation of the use of a car. You can see what actually makes sense to you. So as David pointed out earlier, you can use a car, and even if you think that you're using it a lot, the vast majority of the time is just a vehicle that's been parked. So hopefully with this tool, you can see which model is best suited for you. This is not to say that the commons is the best and only solution, or that the shared commercial vehicles are the best solution. It just means that there are many different types of users, and for some, and I dare say for the majority of the users, having a shared vehicle is the solution. But of course, there might be some outliers that for whom a private car is the best option. And again, this tool is free to use. It's live, and you can play around with it. If you know your costs, you can input your actual costs and your actual usage. If not, it usually it comes loaded with the standard values. But do play around with it. See if your current mode of transportation makes sense to you, and let us know if there's anything that is a bit off, so we can improve it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think it's good for us to always realize at Cenex we are usually in a bubble of a lot of people who would like to make the planet a nice place to live in, and to work on sustainable mobility. But there's a lot of other rationales that people might have to make the choices that they are making for their mobility choice. And yeah, I think it's good for us to realize that the money also always plays a role, obviously. Thank you for sharing the link also, Pablo. Yeah, I would like to end with a brief conversation of all of us. What is your biggest concern looking towards the future? And I ask this all three of you. Maybe I start with you, Jacoba. What do you think we should start doing first if we want to make a real change?
For me at the moment, I think my most concern is about the parking spots. We have standards. COA has standards for parking spots, but it's an old-fashioned idea with less shared mobility. In the biggest cities like Amsterdam, we have a reduction of parking spots if you use shared mobility. But as my example, for example, with the Bomenbuurt, there is not any form of shared mobility yet. And then we put a lot of parking spots instead of social inclusion, instead of green, instead of shared mobility. And it really means courage to start with shared mobility in those areas, because then it needs to have money. You need to have a marketing plan, and it needs to have collaboration between a lot of parties like real estate developers, municipalities, but also the people in the neighborhood as well. So the example of Pablo is very much a useful tool And then I can imagine that we can reduce parking spots, build more, but keep the green as we can, and have more social inclusion.
Thank you for that. David, what would you say is your main concern right now?
Yeah, my main concern, I think, is that we have to foster that commons feeling. So the more
Hmm.
people begin to experience and feel what it is like to join up in a neighborhood as a group of citizens and neighbors and take our fate in our own hands rather than be dependent on a government or big corporations that want to sell us stuff. For me, that is something very crucial to change society step by step. And
Hmm.
car sharing is just an example. We see similar initiatives in living. My daughter
Hmm.
is now participating in a housing corporation that they established themselves. And I think that's where my hope is really that this will begin to fly more and more. It's a
Yeah.
grassroots movement, but it's catching up. Yeah.
Yeah, I see the same also with energy sharing. There are
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
Yeah.
nice examples of groups of citizens sharing their energy together. And of course, it always takes a bit of time to get going, right? You mentioned also the external partner. I think we can mention Town Making here, and Walter
Yeah.
Dresser, who made a big was a big help with supporting you with insurance and Kamer van Koophandel. And you have to get going at the beginning, right? You have to figure out where does it start. So a little bit of help is definitely useful there. But at the same time, I see what you mean in that it's also a paradigm shift, right? People need to experience what it's like to be part of a common and how that can make them feel. And yeah, it's a challenge to get them in, but hopefully once they're in, they feel the difference, and then yeah.
Yeah, you have to begin doing it, showing it that it
Mm-hmm.
works. Not
Yeah.
theorize about it, but make it happen on a small scale, and then
Yeah.
it will grow. But that's what we're seeing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. It's the same for you, Jacoba, with your Scootmobile example. Just that
Yeah.
seeing is believing, right?
Yeah.
If you see that it works. And what about you, Pablo? What would be your main concern?
I think that the technology is ready, but indeed, as David said, none of it moves without a shift in how we see mobility. So examples like these mobility as commons, it kind of shows a way in which active participation can shift mindset, and then policy will follow, because we know that in many cases policy should be there beforehand, but it's not always the case. Um, and I would add that the idea of how much does mobility cost? Yeah, it costs more than you think, but
Yeah.
it's also way less than you might need to spend.
Hmm.
So that shift in the mindset is something that's needed, and active participation is a way to push forward for it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's a challenge to stimulate these grassroots initiatives for policymakers, but I think it's happening more and more. So as long as we keep on sharing these great examples like you guys just did, I think that's a good place to start. So thank you very much for your contributions. I think this was very inspiring webinar indeed, and I'm very happy that we asked you to contribute. Um, so thanks to our audience for being with us and listening in. And yeah, please spread the word, spread the webinar, and keep this change going. So thank you very much, and have a lovely Wednesday. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Where are we now?